Before I share my story, let me ask you, what would you do if the child you trusted most asked for a simple favor, only for your whole world to disappear with a single signature? I thought I was just helping my son, signing a piece of paper he said was nothing. But the day I realized what I'd signed away, I understood I'd spent years believing love was enough to keep me safe. This isn't just a story about paperwork or trust. It's about the moment you decide to stop making excuses for someone else's choices and the courage it takes to fight for your own life, even when it means risking everything. So settle in, and if you've ever wondered what you'd do in my shoes, hit that subscribe button. Because what happened next changed not just my family, but the way I see myself forever. The day my son handed me a pen and said, "Mom, sign this. It's nothing," I realized I'd spent my whole life trusting him with everything, never thinking he'd take it all. It started with a knock on the door. Not the kind that comes in the middle of the night, but the kind that makes your heart flutter with hope before you even answer. My son, David, was on the other side, his smile wide, his arms full of groceries. "Thought I'd bring you a few things, Mom," he said, setting the bags on the counter. "You've been working too hard. Let me help." I smiled, my heart swelling with pride and gratitude. David had always been a good son, thoughtful, responsible, the kind of boy who called every Sunday, who fixed the leaky faucet, who made sure I had everything I needed. After his father died, he'd stepped up, taking care of the house, the bills, the little things that made life easier. I told myself I was lucky, that I'd raised him right, that I could trust him with anything. We spent the afternoon together, unpacking groceries, making soup, talking about his job, his friends, his plans for the future. He asked about Ruth, about the neighbors, about the garden. He listened, offering advice and encouragement, his eyes full of love. After dinner, as we sat in the living room, David pulled a folder from his bag. "Mom, I need a favor," he said, his voice casual. "It's just some paperwork for the house. The bank needs your signature. It's nothing, really, just a formality." I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. I'd always trusted David with the finances, letting him handle the bills, the taxes, the insurance. I told myself it was easier that way, that he knew what he was doing, that I didn't need to worry. I took the pen, my hands shaking, and signed where he pointed. "Thank you, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek. "You're the best." The next few weeks passed in a blur of routine. I went to work, tended the garden, called Ruth every evening. David stopped by often, bringing groceries, fixing things around the house, making sure I was okay. But I started to notice little things. The mail was lighter, the bills fewer. The phone rang less often, the neighbors seemed distant. I tried to brush it off, to tell myself it was just a busy season, that everyone was caught up in their own lives. But the doubt lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. One afternoon, I went to the bank to withdraw some cash. The teller frowned, her eyes scanning the screen. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Evans. It looks like your account has been closed." I stared at her, confusion and fear warring inside me. "Closed? There must be a mistake." She shook her head, her voice gentle. "It was closed last week. The paperwork was signed by you and your son." My heart pounded as I remembered the folder, the pen, the signature. I realized then that sometimes, the people you trust most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is learning to protect yourself, even from your own family. If you've ever signed something you didn't understand, or if you want to see what happens when a mother finally stands up for her own life, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever trusted someone and paid the price? I read every story, and you never know who you might help by sharing. I left the bank in a daze, the world spinning around me. I walked home slowly, the sun too bright, the air too heavy, the sounds of the city muffled by the roar in my ears. I tried to make sense of what had happened, tried to remember every detail of that night with David, the way he'd smiled, the way he'd handed me the pen, the way he'd said, "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing, it was everything. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table, the bank statement trembling in my hands. I thought about the years I'd spent building a life for David, about the sacrifices I'd made, about the love I'd given. I wondered when he'd started seeing me as a burden, as a problem to be solved, as someone to be managed instead of loved. I called Ruth, my voice shaking. Ruth, something's wrong. David had me sign some papers and now my account is closed. The bank says I signed it, but I don't remember what it was. Ruth was silent for a long moment, then said, Anna, you need to talk to a lawyer. You need to find out what you signed. I nodded, wiping my eyes. I just don't understand. Why would he do this? She sighed, her voice gentle. Sometimes people do things out of fear or greed or desperation, but you don't have to accept it. You can fight back. That night I lay awake, listening to the wind in the trees, the creak of the old house, the distant sound of a train on the tracks. I thought about Tom, about the life we'd built, about the family we'd raised. I wondered what he would say if he could see us now, his son taking everything, his wife left with nothing. I realized then that sometimes the hardest thing you can do is admit that love isn't always enough. And sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to let go. The next morning, I called the bank manager, a kind woman named Mrs. Patel. She listened to my story, her voice full of sympathy. Mrs. Evans, I'm so sorry. According to our records, you and your son signed a transfer of ownership. The account, the house, the car, they're all in his name now. I felt a wave of nausea, the room spinning around me. Is there anything I can do? She hesitated, then said, You'll need to talk to a lawyer. I wish I could help more. I spent the day gathering paperwork, bank statements, tax returns, insurance policies. I called Ruth, asking her to come over, her presence a comfort. We'll figure this out, Anna, she said, her voice steady. You're not alone. We sat at the kitchen table, sorting through the papers, trying to piece together what had happened. Ruth read through the documents, her brow furrowed. Anna, you signed over everything. The house, the car, the savings. It's all in David's name now. I stared at her, disbelief and fear warring inside me. How could I have been so stupid? She squeezed my hand, her eyes kind. You trusted your son. That's not stupid. That's love. The days that followed were a blur of phone calls and meetings. I met with a lawyer, a kind man named Mr. Lee, who listened to my story with patience and empathy. Mrs. Evans, I'm sorry to say this, but unless you can prove you were coerced or misled, there's not much we can do. The documents are legal. Your son owns everything. I felt a wave of despair, the world closing in around me. What am I supposed to do? He sighed, his voice gentle. You can try to talk to him. You can ask him to give it back. But legally, your options are limited. I called David, my voice trembling. David, I need to talk to you. I went to the bank. The account is closed. The house is in your name. Why did you do this? He was silent for a moment, then said, Mom, I'm just trying to protect you. You're getting older. You need someone to take care of things. I felt a surge of anger, sharper than anything I'd ever known. I don't need you to take care of me, David. I need you to respect me. I need you to trust me. He sighed, his voice impatient. You're overreacting, Mom. It's just paperwork, it's nothing. I hung up, my heart breaking. The weeks passed and things only got worse. David started making decisions without me, selling the car, changing the locks, moving money from the account. He stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped answering my messages. I felt like a stranger in my own life, a ghost in my own home. Ruth was my anchor. She came by every day, bringing food, laughter, and the kind of comfort only a sister can give. We sat on the porch, watching the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. You have to fight, Anna, she said, her voice fierce. You can't let him take everything. You have rights. I nodded, my resolve hardening. I will, Ruth, I promise. One afternoon, I came home to find a notice on the door, an eviction notice signed by David. I stared at the paper, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. I realized then that sometimes, the people you trust most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is learning to protect yourself, even from your own family. I stood on the porch, the eviction notice trembling in my hands, the world spinning around me. I read the words over and over, unable to make sense of them. My own son, my David, had signed the paper, had told the world I was no longer welcome in the home I'd built, the home I'd filled with love and laughter and memories. I felt a wave of anger, sharper than anything I'd ever known. I thought about the years I'd spent working 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, about the nights I'd stayed up with David when he was sick, about the sacrifices I'd made so he could have every opportunity I never did. I wondered when he'd stopped seeing me as his mother, when I'd become just another obstacle in his path. I called Ruth, my voice shaking. "Ruth, he's evicting me. My own son is kicking me out of my house." She was silent for a long moment, then said, "Anna, you can't let him do this. You have to fight. You have to stand up for yourself." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I will, Ruth, I promise." The next morning, I met with Mr. Lee, my lawyer. I showed him the eviction notice, the bank statements, the transfer of ownership papers. He shook his head, his face grim. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Evans. This is one of the worst cases I've seen. But you're not alone. We'll fight this." We spent hours going over the documents, looking for any loophole, any sign of coercion, any way to prove that David had taken advantage of me. Mr. Lee filed an injunction to stop the eviction, bought me a little more time, gave me hope that I might be able to save my home. But the fight was exhausting. Every day brought new challenges, court dates, legal fees, sleepless nights. I started working extra shifts at the library, picking up odd jobs to pay the bills. I sold my jewelry, my car, anything I could spare. I cut back on groceries, skipped my medication, made do with less and less. Ruth was my anchor. She came by every evening, bringing food, laughter, and the kind of comfort only a sister can give. We sat on the porch, watching the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. "You're stronger than you think, Anna," she said, her voice full of pride. "You've survived worse. You'll survive this." I nodded, my resolve hardening. I can't let him win. The court case dragged on for months. David hired a team of lawyers, their arguments sharp and cold. They painted me as forgetful, as incapable, as someone who needed to be managed. They brought up every mistake I'd ever made, every bill I'd ever paid late, every time I'd forgotten an appointment or lost my keys. I sat in the courtroom, my hands folded in my lap, my back straight, my heart pounding. I listened as they tried to erase me, to rewrite my story, to take away everything I'd built. But I refused to be erased. I took the stand, my voice steady, my eyes clear. "I am not helpless," I said, my voice ringing out. "I am not incompetent. I am not a burden. I am a mother, a sister, a friend. I have built a life from nothing, and I will not let anyone take it away from me." The judge listened, her eyes kind. She asked questions, listened to my answers, weighed the evidence. After the hearing, Ruth hugged me, her arms tight around my shoulders. "You did it, Anna. You stood up for yourself. You showed them who you are." I smiled, my heart full. I just hope it's enough. The waiting was the hardest part. Weeks passed with no word from the court. I tried to keep busy, working, volunteering, spending time with friends. I found comfort in the small things, baking bread, planting flowers, reading stories to Lily at night. But every time the phone rang, my heart leapt, my hands shook, my mind raced with fear. One afternoon, the call finally came. Mr. Lee's voice was calm, but I could hear the excitement in his words. "Anna, the judge ruled in your favor. The eviction is overturned. The house is yours." I felt a wave of relief, gratitude swelling in my chest. I thanked him, tears streaming down my face. That night I sat on the porch, the stars bright above me, the air cool and sweet. I thought about the fight I'd waged, the strength I'd found, the love that had carried me through every storm. I realized then that healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing to move forward, one day at a time. And I promised myself that, whatever happened next, I would never let myself be erased. Winning the court case should have felt like a victory, but the truth was more complicated. I kept my house, but I lost my son. David didn't call, didn't visit, didn't send a card for my birthday or Christmas. The silence between us was heavy, a wound that refused to heal. Ruth tried to fill the gap, her presence a comfort. She came by every day, bringing groceries, laughter, and the kind of love that only a sister can give. We sat on the porch, watching the seasons change, talking about everything and nothing. "You did what you had to do, Anna," she said, her voice gentle. "You protected yourself, you protected your home, that's what matters." I nodded, my heart aching. I just wish it didn't hurt so much. She squeezed my hand, her eyes full of understanding. "Healing always hurts, Anna, but you're stronger than you think." I tried to move on, to rebuild my life. I went back to work at the library, picking up extra shifts, finding comfort in the quiet order of books. I volunteered at the community center, helping children learn to read, sharing my love of stories. I spent more time with Lily, helping her with homework, cheering at her soccer games, listening to her dreams for the future. But the ache of David's absence lingered. I missed the boy I'd raised, the man I'd hoped he would become. I wondered if he would ever forgive me, if I would ever forgive him, if we would ever find our way back to each other. One afternoon, as I was working in the garden, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked up to see David standing by the gate, his face pale, his eyes full of regret. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling, "can we talk?" I nodded, wiping my hands on my apron. "Of course, David, come in." We sat on the porch, the silence between us heavy. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I was scared. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting you. But I see now that I was wrong. I see now that I hurt you." I reached for his hand, my own voice shaking. "We all make mistakes, David. What matters is that we learn from them." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I want to make it right, Mom. I want to be part of your life again." I hugged him, holding him close as we both cried. I realized then that sometimes the greatest act of love is forgiveness. As the months passed, David and I worked to rebuild our relationship. He came by more often, helping with chores, sharing meals, talking about his life. He apologized again and again, his words sincere, his actions even more so. He helped me with the bills, fixed the leaky faucet, mowed the lawn without being asked. I watched him grow into the man I'd always hoped he would be: kind, responsible, willing to admit his mistakes and learn from them. Ruth was a constant presence, her wisdom and humor a source of comfort. She and I started a tradition of Sunday dinners, inviting friends and neighbors, filling the house with the sound of laughter and the smell of fresh bread. We shared stories, swapped recipes, and celebrated every small victory. Lily flourished, her laughter filling the house, her dreams growing bigger with every passing day. She asked questions, hard ones, honest ones, but she never stopped loving her father, never stopped trusting me. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, David turned to me, his eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom. Thank you for fighting for us." I smiled, my heart full. "That's what love is, David. It's fighting for each other even when it's hard." He hugged me, his arms tight around me, his voice breaking. "I love you, Mom, I always have." I hugged him back, my tears falling freely. "I love you too, David, always." As the seasons changed, so did our family. We grew closer, stronger, more connected. The wounds of the past faded, replaced by new memories, new traditions, new hope. I realized then that healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing to move forward together. And I promised myself that, whatever happened next, I would never let myself be erased. As the years passed, the pain of what happened with David softened, replaced by a new kind of understanding. Our relationship was never quite the same, but it was real, honest, sometimes raw, but built on a foundation of truth instead of secrets. We learned to talk about hard things, to apologize when we were wrong, to forgive each other for being human. Ruth remained my anchor, her laughter and wisdom a constant source of comfort. She and I kept up our Sunday dinners, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes with David and Lily, sometimes with neighbors who had become like family. The table was always full, the conversation easy, the laughter genuine. I found myself looking forward to those evenings, to the warmth of shared meals, to the comfort of being seen. Lily grew into a bright, compassionate young woman. She excelled in school, made friends easily, and never lost her sense of wonder. She asked hard questions, demanded honest answers, and taught me that love is sometimes about letting go and sometimes about holding on tighter than ever. One spring, David brought a new woman to dinner. Her name was Claire, and she was kind, gentle, and full of quiet strength. She listened more than she spoke, laughed easily, and treated Lily as if she were her own. I watched the way David looked at her, the way he smiled, the way he seemed lighter, freer, more himself than I'd seen in years. After dinner, Claire stayed behind to help me wash the dishes. We talked about everything and nothing: gardening, books, the weather. She told me about her own family, about the struggles she'd faced, about the lessons she'd learned. "I think you're brave, Anna," she said, her voice soft. "You fought for your life, for your home, for your family. That takes courage." I smiled, my heart full. "We all have to be brave sometimes, Claire. We all have to fight for what matters." She nodded, her eyes shining. "I hope I can be as strong as you someday." As the seasons changed, so did our family. We grew closer, stronger, more connected. The wounds of the past faded, replaced by new memories, new traditions, new hope. I realized then that healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing to move forward together. And I promised myself that, whatever happened next, I would never let myself be erased. As the years rolled on, I learned that healing is not a straight line. There were days when the old pain would flare up, when I'd see a mother and son laughing together in the park, or when I'd find an old photo of David as a boy, his smile wide and full of trust. There were nights when I'd lie awake, wondering if I could have done something different, if I could have protected him from his own worst instincts, if I could have protected myself sooner. But there were also days of joy, days when Lily would come home from school, her arms full of wildflowers, her laughter echoing through the house. Days when Ruth and I would sit on the porch, sharing stories and secrets, our bond stronger than ever. Days when David would call just to say hello, his voice lighter, his words full of gratitude. I found new purpose in my work at the library. Helping children discover the magic of books, teaching adults to read, organizing community events. I started a book club, made new friends, found joy in the simple act of sharing stories. I volunteered at the community center, helping women who had lost everything, jobs, homes, marriages, find their footing again. I realized then that my worth was not tied to what I owned, or what I'd lost, or even to the love of my family. My worth was something I carried inside me, something no one could take away. One summer, Lily graduated from high school. The ceremony was held in the park, the air thick with the scent of roses and the sound of applause. I watched her walk across the stage, her head held high, her eyes shining with pride. I thought about the little girl she'd been, the woman she was becoming, the future she was building for herself. After the ceremony, we gathered at the house for a celebration. Ruth brought her famous lemon bars, David grilled burgers in the backyard, Claire made a salad with vegetables from her garden. The table was full, the conversation easy, the laughter genuine. Lily hugged me, her arms tight around my shoulders. "Thank you, Grandma, for everything, for teaching me to be strong, for showing me what it means to fight for yourself." I hugged her back, my heart full. "You're my greatest joy, Lily. You always have been." That evening, as the sun set and the guests drifted home, David stayed behind to help me clean up. We worked in silence for a while, the only sound the clink of dishes and the hum of the dishwasher. Finally, he turned to me, his eyes full of regret. "Mom, I know I can never undo what I did. I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the way you fought for yourself, for your home, for your life." I smiled, tears slipping down my cheeks. "Thank you, David. That means more than you know." He hugged me, his arms strong and steady. "I love you, Mom. I always have." I hugged him back, my heart overflowing. "I love you too, David, always." As the years passed, our family grew, new marriages, new bobbies, new traditions. The house was always full, the table always set for one more. I found joy in the chaos, in the noise, in the mess of a life well lived. I realized then that the greatest gift I could give my family was not my money, or my house, or even my time. The greatest gift was my example, the example of a woman who refused to be erased, who fought for her own life, who learned to love herself even when it was hard. One autumn, as the leaves turned gold and the air grew crisp, I sat on the porch with Ruth, watching the world change around us. "You did it, Anna," she said, her voice full of pride. "You built a life worth living. You showed us all what it means to be strong." I smiled, my heart full. "We all have to be strong sometimes, Ruth. We all have to fight for what matters." She nodded, her eyes shining. "I'm glad you fought for yourself, Anna. I'm glad you taught us all how to do the same." As the sun set, I thought about the journey I'd taken, the pain, the loss, the betrayal, the healing. I realized then that healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing to move forward together. And I promised myself that, whatever happened next, I would never let myself be erased. Sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones who test our strength the hardest. I never imagined my own son would ask for a signature that would cost me everything, or that I'd have to fight for my own home, my dignity, and my place in the world. But life has a way of showing us that our worth isn't measured by what we lose, but by the boundaries we hold and the love we fight to protect. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you love, or if you've ever had to rebuild your life after losing everything, I hope you know you're not alone. I know what it's like to sit in the quiet after everyone's gone, to wonder if you did enough, if you loved enough, if you mattered enough. I know what it's like to feel the ache of old wounds and the hope of new beginnings, to want to hold on and let go at the same time. But I also know that healing is possible. That courage is a choice you make every day, sometimes in small ways, sometimes in ways that change everything. I know that you can be broken and still be whole, that you can be pushed out and still come back stronger, that you can be overlooked and still be the heart of your family. Would you have signed the paper, or would you have asked more questions? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, because sometimes sharing our pain is the first step toward healing. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and share it with someone who might need a little hope tonight. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for listening and for being part of this family. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, even after the deepest heartbreak, you can still choose to begin again. And if you want to see what happens when a woman finally chooses herself, or if you believe in the power of second chances, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the next story might just be the one you need.